Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming this afternoon to our Cleveland Hungarian Heritage Museum. I'm Clara Papp. On behalf of the organizing committee, I'm very pleased to welcome you here today. Today is our first in the spring series of lectures held each month on the second Saturday through May, all starting at 2 p.m. Our topic today is Hungary's folk customs. Hungary has a very rich tradition of folk customs, and we are very honored and lucky to have Dr. Enikő speak about the annual cycle of traditions, folk traditions that are celebrated in Hungary. Starting with the new year, virtually every month has something pertaining to both the calendar year as well as the life cycle. She will discuss how these traditions have been modified over the years and is still celebrated today in meaningful ways. Let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Bush. She is an educational researcher focusing on teacher education and innovative instructional methods. She graduated first as a Hungarian language teacher and then as an educational researcher at the University of Szeged. She received her PhD in Doctor of Educational Sciences last year, receiving summa cum laude, the highest recognition and honor for her work. Currently, she is a Fulbright visiting scholar at Cleveland State University, teaching Hungarian language to diverse ages. So without further ado, help me welcome Dr. Bush Enikő.
Thank you. Segít bekapcsolni nekem. Nem tudom melyiknek. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you everyone for coming. It's so lovely to see so many people. I'm so excited. Can you hear me now? Okay, good. So I'm going to start this presentation ab ovo gemino, which is a Latin phrase, and this phrase comes from Heracles Ars Poetica, who described his ideal epic poet as the one who does not start the Trojan War with the double X. And by that he refers to those double X from which Helene of Troy was born, and she's the lady who caused all the trouble over there. So Heracles might not like my presentation now, but I am going back now to those eggs. I have to take you back in time first, and you will see that this presentation is all about time. So let's start it. First, I am going to talk about how time was invented. How did it become such an important feature in all of our lives? And then I will briefly introduce you the origin of the names of the months. How did it become the ones that we use today? And after that, I will shift to the costumes and habits that people, and that specifically Hungarians, have throughout the year. So like I said, humanity is obsessed with time. We are trying to track time from the very beginning, and we are trying to track time from different aspects for different purposes, and we use different tools to do that. It's all about time. It's all around us. We are living according to time, and really it defines our lives. For example, when do we have to get to work? What time is the kids' piano lesson? What time is the exam? Or even at the gym, right? So we always track time. It's all, we all measure our lives according to time. But have you ever wondered how time was invented? How did it become the most important feature in our lives? How comes that time can determine when to celebrate or when should we express love towards our spouses? Now think of the Valentine's Day. It tells us that we have to express our love on the 14th of February, not the day before or the day after, but on that day, because this is the costume, this is the habit. And human customs have such an ancient and strong roots that cannot be overwritten. We carry them on. We are trying to split the steady flow of the time into smaller units. There is 3 of these smaller units: the days, the month, and the years. And to be able to follow these units, people try to measure and model and follow the movements of 3 planets. First of all, according to the old view, the sun orbits around the Earth, right? It goes from west to east, no, other way around, from east to west. And one arch is 1 day. So this is how days are measured. And then the moon also orbits around the Earth, and this is what measured the month, the amount of the month. This is where the English word comes from, moon and month. They sound similar. And according to the new heliocentric view, the Earth orbits around the Sun, and while the Earth makes one circle, that completes to a year. And up until today, these 3 movements determines the time unit in each and every calendar system. The light phases of the moon are perfectly suitable to track the months and the weeks. 1 moon month equals to 29.5 days, more specifically 29 days, 12 hours and 44 minutes. But as you can see, this is not exactly accurate. 1 month is not 29.5 days, but sometimes longer. It happens. So this has led to a shift between the old calendar systems and the actual time. This problem had 2 different calendar reforms, but some calendars still use the moon months, even today, like the Jewish Unego calendar or the Islamic calendars. At the prehistoric time, the cavemen had very basic sense of time. There were daytimes and nighttimes, you know, light and darkness, and there were the recurring seasons. They realized when there is more daylight, then the weather is nicer, the crop is richer. But when winter comes, darkness comes. And darkness was scary. You know, the human brain is amazing. No matter how old or educated you are, your brain is capable of making up explanations to anything. Seriously. Think of a small child now. When they learn that the Earth is spherical and not flat, they accept this fact. But they still make up very funny explanations because they don't understand why people do not fall off from the other side if it's spherical, you know? This phenomena is called naive notions. So prehistoric humans had such naive notions to those phenomena they could not explain in any other ways. Like, for example, what happens to the light at nighttime? Does it hide somewhere? Or why natural disasters happen? So they believe that these phenomena are caused by some supernatural force because they couldn't explain it in any other way. So they started to get attached to these supernatural beliefs, and the first pagan religions appeared along with the first sacred rituals. Therefore, it became important to track the time mainly because of these sacred traditions. Although thousands and thousands of years ago no world religions existed, each and every commune had their own rituals, beliefs, and costumes. What was the purpose of these rituals? It was almost always the same: to receive blessings, to make the women, the cattle, and the land fertile and ample, to fend off the natural disasters, and to delay death. But that's all we want, really, even today, right? There's nothing else. The archaic people followed the state of the stars on the sky. So like imagine that you are watching the very same TV program every single night throughout your whole life. You get used to it, and you can recognize when it moves a little bit. So because of that, the ancient prehistoric man knew exactly what time are the spring and autumn equinoxes and the summer and winter solstices. They believed that these 2 days, the equinoxes, the solstices, have magical power because this is the time when the night is the longest. And the nighttime helps the harming spirits to come over and to cause harm. But the equinoxes also had agricultural importance. They indicated the beginning and the end of the agricultural year. They sent out the animals to the lands after the spring equinox and called them back after the fall equinox. So our ancestors tried to split the time into smaller units than just seasons, and by this, months were created. In the ancient Rome, the first king of each month was announced when the waning crescent appeared on the sky. In Latin, it's called calare, which means to announce, and this is where our word calendar roots, calare, calendar. The names of the months, both in English and Hungarian, have Latin origin. They can be dated back to the ancient Roman era, and the legend says that the names of the months were given by the first king of Rome, Romulus. One of them, I don't know which one, they are brothers. At that time, 1 year consisted of 304 days, because they believed in the moon month, remember? So, therefore, Romulus split them into 10 months. He named the first month after his father, god Mars, so it became Martius. But to be fair to his parents, he named the second month after his mother, whose Etruscan name was Apru, but you might know her better from the name Aphrodite or Venus. This is how the second month became Aprilish, from Apru. To express his honor towards the seniors, or maiores in Latin, he named the next month Maius. But to be fair again, he named the fourth month after the young people, or juniores, and this became Junius, Junius in Hungarian. And unfortunately, at this point, Romulus was out of creativity, so he just simply numbered the rest of the month. So you see 5th month, quintilis, 6th sextilis, 7th September, 8th month October, 9th November, 10th December. But then how comes that December, which is today the 12th month, is to be the 10th? Does anybody know?
March was the first month and the 10th month.
Yeah, so something happened. Later, when the second king of Rome, Numa Pompilius, introduced the 12-month year, he added 2 extra months. And since he was the king, he added them to the top of the list, not to the end, of course. He named the first month after Janus, the two-faced god, because he's looking back at the old year with one face and also looks forward to the new year with on the other hand, right? And the name of the second month, Februarius, comes from the Etruscan februa word, which means purgation. Even the ancient Romans were fasting time to time, although clearly not because of Christian considerations, but because they knew that the body has to be cleared after the long winter dazzle. So these 2 extra months caused the shift in the names. But I was wondering actually what happened. He announced that, okay, from now on, the 10th month will be the 12th month, and that must have caused some confusion in the people. So this is a legend, probably. I'm not sure how much is true of this, but as you see, the list is still not like today, because the 5th and the 6th months used to have different names. So when Julius Caesar became the ruler of Rome, there was a huge shift between the actual time and what the calendar said. Actually, there were 3 months shift in 47 before Christ, at the time when Julius Caesar ruled. So he mandated the Egyptian astronomer Sosigenes to work out a new calendar system. And this was the longest year in human history, because as Sosigenes recommended, they had to add 2 extra months between November and December in that specific year in order to catch up. But anyway, since the calendar has already been modified, Caesar said, okay, let's name a month after me. I'm the ruler, I deserve a month. This is how we have Julius. And you might know that Julius Caesar and Augustus loved to compete. Augustus was the next ruler after Julius Caesar, and he was not a king anymore, but an emperor. And an emperor deserves a month, right? So what did he say? Okay, I have a month now. And here you see our current calendar system. Since the center of the Catholic Church is Rome, the calendar system and the names have spread all over the Catholic region, the Catholic world. But since the Church could not completely get rid of the sacred rituals, the pagan rituals, not even by force, the Church decided to build their own sacred rituals, sacred costumes on the top of the old ones. This has led to an overlay system. People kept their own pagan habits, but from now on it was called Christian. You'll see what I'm talking about. As part of this costume replacement, for example, the Church ordered to celebrate Christmas instead of the winter solstice, which was a pagan habit, and to celebrate Easter and Pentecost instead of the ancient spring equinox celebrations. Instead of pagan necromancy, the Church ordered the prayers intended to saints on their name days. The Church decided to put the most important celebrations between the winter and spring solstices. Does anybody know why? Why in that period? Why do we have the Christian celebrations between the winter solstice and the spring solstice? Exactly, that's right. At the summer, there was work to do. They could not celebrate. There was no time to celebrate. They had to celebrate in the winter when there is nothing else to do. You're right. That's a very simple explanation. So when the Hungarian nation adapted the Roman Catholic calendar system and beliefs after our land taking in the Carpathian Basin, exactly in 1000, January the 1st, when our first king Stephen was crowned, we also adapted all these customs. And since the pagan customs were prohibited in Hungary, it was seriously prohibited, over time the Hungarian ancient pagan customs disappeared, but new ones were formed during the centuries. This is what I'm going to introduce you now. And now the Catholic year is not exactly the same as the civilian year, because the Catholic year begins with Advent in December and ends in the next December. Therefore, I'm going to start this introduction from December, starting with the Advent period. We call the 4 weeks prior Christmas as the period of Advent. It always includes 4 Sundays, therefore we can call it a moving feast because its beginning is always determined by the actual date of the Christmas in a given year. You see a wreath here. The green colors in the wreath symbolizes the nature and the fertility within the house during the cold and gray winter when everything else is dead outside. The 4 Sundays are symbolized by the candles on the Advent wreath. We light up one on each Sunday until Christmas. We could believe that people were excited about the birth of Christ, and that's why this period is so important. But this is actually another Catholic remake. This custom is much older than Christianity. The word Advent means arrival, but it does not refer to the arrival of Christ, but it refers to the arrival of light. People were very superstitious, and winter was long and dark. Remember, there were no street lights, no lamps. They only had candles, so it was really dark outside. So they lighted up more and more candles until the winter solstice, which is on the 21st of December. And at winter solstice, the night and day ratio turns around. The nights become shorter and the days become longer. So that's why we still have this costume, but now we call it waiting for the Messiah's coming. We still carry this habit. At school, children can make their own Christmas wreath, and they can decorate it, take it home, and the family can look at it, and they're nice. Like I said, the celebration of Jesus' birth was moved to this period by the Church because they saw how scared and superstitious the people were back then. In fact, Jesus was born sometime during the summer, but his birthday was moved twice. At first in 325, at the first Nicea Synod, they moved it to January the 6th. But then in 350, Pope Julius I decided to move it at the time of the winter solstice. They said Advent is the period when we are waiting for Jesus' arrival. The beginning of the Advent period was announced by midnight bells in Hungary and is still in some places. And at dawn, people went to Mass and they were waiting in the dark for the Messiah to come. And some who believed in the old gods, they were waiting for the Messiah as the sunlight to come during the dawn Mass. In Transylvania, people had to lock everything very well while they went to the Mass because they believed that the unexpected or unusual bell sign at midnight scares the witches, and witches can turn to an animal form and cause harm in the goods. So they were really superstitious. Like I said, the church changed the necromancy to prayers to saints. There are days during the Advent period that are named after all sorts of saints, but I'm only going to introduce you 2 of them, which still carry costumes even today. The others, unfortunately, faded away by the time. The first is Mikulás. This is our Santa Claus, and he is coming on December the 6th, or his German name is Nikolaus. He was actually named by Saint Michael, who was a bishop and who is the most sacred saint of the Eastern Catholic Church up until today. And the legend says that on one cold night, he put 3 sacks of gold into the window of 3 poor girls because he wanted to free them from poorness and he wanted them to marry well. But as he was trying to seek out from the window, one girl saw his back. In the snowing winter, she saw a man in a red coat with a red funny hat. So this is how his story origins. Our word Mikulás actually has a Czechish origin, but the custom of giving presents spread in the Carpathian Basin region from the Austrians during the 19th century. Mikulás, how we believe, lives in the sky, and not in Lapland, because that's only like consumerism's effect on our costumes. So he lives in the sky, and he's always accompanied by little Krampuses, who are small devils. They are the helpers of Santa. Sometimes they punish the bad kids. There were small postcards earlier that they try to scare the bad kids. And you can meet Santa in person, just like here. You can meet Santa mostly at schools, when the school hire somebody to go around the classroom or accompany Santa. And I always tell this story that when I was a kid, like 5 years old, my mom's company had hired this guy to be a Santa. And since he had no idea of anybody's kid, the parents had to write some notes, a couple of notes to him. And according to that, he was evaluating the kids. And my mom wrote him that my room is a mess. And the guy was overacting. He was really in his place. So he told me off. Santa Claus told me off in front of a large audience that my room is a mess and I was a bad kid. And you know, I was just like 5 years old. I burst into tears and I wanted to go home. So I always tell everybody that if you have a kid, please don't tell anything bad to Santa about the kid because it can cause lifelong harms, seriously. It was really bad. Yeah, I still couldn't get over it. The next is Lucca Day, which is the most superstitious day in the whole Hungarian costumes. For Lucca Day, there are more folk costumes, beliefs, predictions, and bands. This is because this day was the shortest day of the year before the introduction of the current Gregorian calendar. This day is about fertility enchantments, marriage enchantments, death enchantments, and weather predictions. You can do anything really seriously what you want to do in this day. It was forbidden to bake, wash, to borrow money, or loan money to somebody on this day. Lucca's Day was considered the evil's day throughout the whole Hungarian era. Therefore, people defended against witches everywhere with different tools. People rubbed animals' head with garlic, painted a cross on the doors of hutches, spread ash in front of their houses and gates, ate bread with garlic before going to bed, because so the smell can scare away the spirits, and I believe not only the spirits but my spouse as well. And they even locked off the brooms so the witches cannot just fly. So they were really superstitious. The most known tradition of Luca's Day is the carving of Luca's stool. People had to start the carving on this day, and the stool must consist of 13 different types of wood. You can see the names of each type of wood, and only one carving movement could be done each day, but the stool had to be ready for Christmas. There is even a proverb, a Hungarian proverb saying lassan készül, mint Luca széke, which means something or somebody gets ready so slow as Luca's stool. Why did it have to be ready by Christmas? Because people took the stool to the midnight mass to the church. They had to stand on it so they could see who's the witch in the village. But as soon as they saw the witch, they had to run because the witches got angry. So in order to protect themselves, they had to pop poppy seeds behind them because they believed in an ancient magic which forces witches to pick up poppy seeds one by one from the ground. It's a shame we don't do that anymore, isn't it? I mean, I would love to go to the church, stand on a stool and see some witches. That would be just so funny. See, it sounds fun. It must have been fun. I would love to participate in a mess like that, just to observe.
So these aren't practiced today?
This is not, but this one is. This is still connected to Luca's Day. People try to predict the following year's crop by planting Luca wheat on this day. Actually, it was just normal wheat. We just call it Luca wheat. They put seeds near the oven, which started to sprout and became green around Christmas, and they tried to predict the next year's crop according to that. But, you know, it's like if I put it in a too hot area, then it becomes yellow. So it's like not really good prediction. But we still do it. You can today buy these hedgehog-shaped little pots. You only have to water them, and they're so cute at Christmas time. Luca calendar was and is also part of the Luca traditions. People watch the weather from Luca's Day until Christmas, because that's only 12 days. And they started to predict the weather for each month of the next year. So like Luca's Day will be what the weather is like on Luca's Day will be the weather like in next January. What's the day after will be in February, and so on. Yes?
What are the seeds?
Just normal wheat.
Just any old seed?
Wheat.
Wheat, oh, okay.
Wheat, any wheat, yeah. We just call it Luca wheat because we had to plant it on Luca's Day.
Oh.
Is that Luca the 13th? Is that where Friday the 13th comes from?
I don't.
13th,
No, that's different.
okay.
And now we have to shift to Christmas. Our word Christmas, karácsony, is a Slavic word. Means crossing or turning day. Therefore, it referred to the winter solstice. Later on, the Catholic Church moved Jesus' birth to this date in order to make people forget these pagan customs. The celebration of the sun god's birthday, that was the winter solstice. Prior to the Puritanism of the Catholic Church Reformation, Christmas was not about piety, but it was about dazzle and mass, intemperate eating and drinking, in memory of the ancient Roman Saturnalia. This was the only day when poor and rich could celebrate together until the 16th century. This day was the beginning of the Hungarian New Year. And when the Gregorian calendar came, it was changed to January the 1st. The custom of setting up a Christmas tree comes from later. It first appeared in the 19th century, around the 1840s, 1850s, in cities where many German-speaking citizens were living. It had the same symbols like the Advent wreath, the green, the alive within the house. Among the ornaments, I have to mention the unique szaloncukor, which is chocolate wrapped in shiny paper, and we hang this up on the tree. We sneak out, we eat them, but leave the paper on the tree. This is the inside. Yeah, it's delicious. It's nice. this is a letter. So at Christmas time, since Santa is coming on December the 6th at Christmas, little Jesus brings the presents, so kids write letters to little Jesus. But have you ever wondered, how can a baby bring presents? Because I was wondering about how can a baby bring presents when I was a kid. Well, he's not exactly doing it alone, but the angels are helping him. So usually while the family is eating the dinner together, some parents sneaked out, put the presents under the tree, rang a bell, and they said that, could you hear that? That's the angel wings. So this is when we give the presents, and we also have midnight mass on that day.
How did they arrive at this address? Bethlehem, I get.
Bethlehem. Istálló út. What is the stable?
Oh, Major Street. Okay, okay.
That's just made up. I'm not sure whether that's his real address or maybe some parent told that, you know. They are really creative. The Christmas plays, the so-called Bethlehemezés, used to be popular in Hungary too. Its main scene was the shepherd's play. An angel wakes up the shepherds sleeping on the fields and sends them to see the newborn Jesus. The main character is a deaf old shepherd whose misunderstandings are the source of the humor. And that's all about Christmas. Now let's talk about the beginning of the new year. This is in the civilian calendar, the 1st of January. Therefore, the church said this is the day when Jesus was circumcised. The customs of the new year start are rooting in the analogical thinking. What happens on the first day will be repeated throughout the whole year. This is why people have to do many nice things on this day. To be with friends around a table full of food and having fun. People said goodbye to the old year with huge noise, and that's why we still have fireworks everywhere around the world. Among the year-starting customs, we stubbornly insist to the superstitions around eating habits. On the first day of the new year, everybody eats pork because it forages the luck into the house, but it was forbidden to eat chicken, yeah, I can hear it, because it scrapes the luck out of the house. Lentils are also the symbol of richness because they look like small coins, so therefore we always eat lentils. The pig, boy. January the 6th, the Catholic world remembers the baptism of Jesus in River Jordan at Epiphany. In Hungary, the homes are sanctified on this day. The initials of the three kings of East and the year is written on the top of the entrance door from the inside. So the priest comes, he writes it on and he's blessing it. The ground in front of the homes are also sanctified with holy water in order to avoid evil spirits. And this is the closing of the Christmas celebrations. This is the time when we take off, put down the tree. And this is also the beginning of the Fasching or Carnival period. The word Fasching has a Irish-Austrian origin. The Germans and the Austrians still call it Fasching. The first written memories of the Hungarian word Fasching are from the mid-14th centuries. That's really long. Originally, it referred to the last day of this period, which is Shrove Tuesday. Because as you see, from Shrove Tuesday, you could still eat. Ash Wednesday is the start of the fasting. Why this period is called Fasching or Fasching in mid-Europe, in other regions it's called Carnevale. The word carnival has Italian origin, coming from the expression of carnelevare or carnevale, which means goodbye meat or leaving the meat. The Hungarian appellation also refers to the upcoming feast period. Sorry. The Fasching period always begins on January the 6th. and ends on Ash Wednesday. So on Ash Wednesday you already have to fast, which is 40 days prior to Easter. So in this year, Farsang period will end on the 5th of March. During this period, costume balls are organized everywhere, starting from kindergarten to company parties, and people can choose any costume, whatever they want. There are no restrictions. But most of the costumes and beliefs are concentrated on the last 3 days of the Farsang period, namely on Farsang Sunday, Farsang Monday, and Shrove Tuesday. These 3 days are also called Farsang Farka, the tail of the Farsang. From the end of the Farsang until Easter, so during the fasting period, it was forbidden to dance, marry, or to dazzle. And after Easter, the work just begins, so again, it was not recommended to marry in working times. Therefore, most of the people married during the winter and especially during Farsang time. Since Farsang was always accompanied by misbehavior, ordinates, and riots, this costume belonged to the band costumes. Its main events are the costume balls, where people could eat and drink as much as they can. Farsang and the following fasting period refers to the end of the winter. People believe that the sun will lose its power during the last days of the winter, which gives power to the evil spirits. So you see, we Hungarians really don't like winter. We were really scared. So they tried to scare them away with loud dazzle costumes and by burning witch dolls. Not real witches, that happened later when they burned alive witches. The most characteristic event through Farsang is the Busó March in Mohács. Following the Turkish occupation, a group of people called Sokács were relocated to Mohács during the 17th century. These Balkan families brought their costumes from their original homeland, which constantly evolved during the centuries. We have written memories about the Busó March since the end of the 1700s. The gathering is always on Farsang Sunday at Mohács on Koló Square, and the march to the main square begins as soon as the cannons fire. On the main square, a jury evaluates the costumes and homemade vehicles. Here are some pictures that I took in 2018. The costumes of the Busós did not change at all during the centuries. They wear a pelisse with the fur outside, pants filled with straws to make it look bigger, colorful cotton stockings and sandal on the feet. The pelisse was tied to the cattle rope and the cowbell was hung up on it. They carry a wooden noisemaker. Wait a second, maybe I can find that picture. There. I don't know the English name. It makes a lot of noise. And, oh, that's too much. And the most important element is the mask. It's always carved out of willow wood piece, and it was painted traditionally with animal blood. There is a sheep leather hood on top of it. Each and every mask is different. There are no two identical ones, because boys have to carve it for themselves, and they are numbered, so each one has a serial number. They're really nice, yeah, and only they can start it when they are young, and as they grew, they can have their own bushos. The girls dress up in these costumes, sokác lányok, the sokác girls, and they just march. And here are the stockings I mentioned and the sandals they wear. Thousands and thousands of people visit Mohács every year to see this march and parade. This is really an amazing experience. If you can make it once, do it definitely.
Is that Mohács?
Mohács.
Munkács.
Mohács.
Mohács.
Mohács. Here's a small girl who was like 4 years old. She's already introduced to the family's costumes. The burial of the winter is on Shrove Tuesday in Mohács. A huge bonfire is set up on the main square, and people burn a symbolic coffin, the coffin of the winter. People dance around the bonfire and welcome the spring by this way. Since Farsang is at winter time, this is the time when most pig slaughters happen, and due to that, most of the main courses prepared for Farsang contain pork meat. But still, the most characteristic food of the Farsang period is, does anybody know? Yes. The Farsang donut, Farsangfang. The Farsang donut is always light, golden brown, and has a white stripe running around in the middle. It is served hot with some marmalade, like kvar, on top of it. Another typical donut is the csöröge, when the flat dough is fried hard in hot oil. Because of the winter, many saint celebrations are during winter, not only during Advent period, but all throughout the whole Farsang period, like January 22nd, Vincenap. This is the Winegrowers Day, because they cut off branches or twigs, they call it vince-twigs, vince-vesszők, and put them in water in the room, and they wait to see how it will sprout, you know. If the branches had many sprouts, the year's wine production will be rich, but if not, people will remain thirsty. It was really important. Yeah, that was a big concern. Since when they didn't have clear water, they drank wine, so it was important. January the 25th is Paul Apostle's turnover from the Bible. It's a weather prediction custom connected to this day. People of the Carpathian Basin generally believe that if the weather is nice on this day, one can expect good crop in that year. But if it's foggy, the cattle will die and the crop will be weak. If it rains, or worse, snows on this day, it means there won't be any crop at all. They also watched the wind. In Szentes, people believe that if there is wind blowing on this day, a war is coming. But at other places, people thought if the wind comes from below, whatever that means, the winter will remain for a long time. This one, February the 2nd, is not a Catholic weather predictive costume, but it comes from Transylvania, where many bears live even today. It's a serious problem sometimes. If the bear comes out of his cave in this day and sees his own shadow, therefore the day is sunny, he goes back to sleep because the winter is still not over. But if it's cloudy, that means we are already about to end the winter and it's nearly ending. I believe every nation has some kind of predictive costume with an animal, right? Yeah, you see? February the 3rd is Saint Balázs, when the blessing for throats, when the priest puts 2 candles in a cross shape, and this is how they bless kids because of that illness that I don't know in English, but used to be a serious problem long time ago. Yeah. And then we have the fasting period after Farsang. So the Farsang period in the Catholic the fasting period in the Catholic religion lasts for 40 days, and it always includes 6 Sundays. The 5th Sunday of this period, I'm sorry. No, not that one. The 5th Friday, I'm sorry, is called in the Trans-Danubian region as Black Friday, but it's not like the American Black Friday. They said that a holló mossa a fiát ezen a napon. They believed that ravens used to be white, but Jesus cursed them. So the holló mossa a fiát means the raven is washing his son. So the raven is trying to wash the sins of himself away because Jesus cursed them, and that's why they turned to black. And also in Trans-Danubian region, at this time, the altar crucifixes were covered with black or purple sheet. And the last week of the fasting is the Holy Week, the week of purgation. Everybody fixed their homes, painted the walls, washed all the clothes, fixed the yard, fixed the house, washed everything. The Holy Week starts on the 6th Sunday of the Farsang, on the last week, which is called Palm Sunday. And earlier, when people respected somebody very well, they tried to cover the path in front of that person. And that's why Jesus' path was covered with palms. That's why it's called Palm Sunday. In Hungary, catkin branches are sanctified by the priest, and this is what they carry around the church, and then they bury the catkin and they use the ashes on next year's Ash Wednesday's Mass. But on Palm Sunday, people took their Easter food, the smoked ham, the cooked eggs, the scones, and the horseradish to the church, so the priest can bless the food as well and sanctify it. Also, this was the day, Palm Sunday was the day when the summer flower seeds had to be planted. On Good Friday, everybody fasted until the first star came up to the sky. It was forbidden to eat meat or fatty food, and women were not allowed to do their chores, and men were only allowed to work around their houses. That was a nice day. Everybody had to take a bath. That was very serious. Everybody had to take a bath on this day. They even washed the animals. So it was really serious. In the Trans-Danubian region, oh yeah, like I said, Raven is watching his. After the fasting period, here comes Easter. Easter is another moving feast because the exact date is always determined by a pretty complex way. It's always on the first Sunday and Monday, following the first full moon after the spring equinox. In this year, it will be on April 21st, 22nd, so it's easier to look at the calendar than to calculate it. Its Hungarian name indicated that people were again allowed to eat meat from this day on. In Hungary, Easter Monday is the big feast. This day is the day of watering. The basis of this custom is the purifying and renewal power of the water. So boys went to the girl's house, told a funny poem, asked for permission for the watering, and no matter whether the permission was given or not, they took a huge bowl of cold well water and threw it on the girls. Well, it caused a lot of health issues back then, so they just changed to using perfumes. And yeah, it was kind of like a survival test for the girls. Here's a video of some. Is it starting? Not? Ah, not the food. I still want to watch the video. They're telling poems for which in exchange they get the food and the eggs. There are some tradition keeper bands in Hungary who dress up as old times and they act all these traditions. They use warm water today. Yeah, they cannot use cold water anymore. And sometimes it turns around. You'll see in a moment. You see, they got the food, and now it's the girls' time. Since the watering is meant to be some kind of a blessing, in exchange, the watering boys were invited into the house and were offered tons of food and drinks, and of course, painted eggs. Painted eggs can be painted to almost any kind of motifs, but this is the very traditional, the red egg painted with white. Today, this old costume starts to fade away, unfortunately. People usually travel away to be with the family at Easter time, or like what I did, I went to see a folk band who acted throughout the whole year, the whole costumes. They remake it for tourists or like people like me. Anyway, usually the kids get chocolate in exchange for the watering from grandma and money. So like I was always jealous of my brother because I had to stay home and they had to be wet when they put perfume on me, and he went out, could eat and get money. So it's not really fair. May the 1st is not a religious feast, but it's a really old feast. People used green leaves to decorate houses on this day since the 15th century. The so-called May tree was set up by boys in front of a girl's house, and by this way the boy expressed to the whole village who is the girl he likes. The first march and parade was actually only in 1890, and after the communist takeover it had become the Labor Day and is since up until today. So today, on May the 1st, we have picnics in parks with concerts and food. And this is the May tree that was set up in front of the girl's house. Pentecost is the last Catholic feast I would like to discuss with you. In this year it will be on June the 9th. This is the celebration of the Holy Spirit. This is another weather predictive day as well. If the weather is nice, the wine product will be great. You see, wine is really important again. So we have to make sure that the wine product will be good. Certain regions still keep the custom of Pentecost king elections. The boys from the village had to measure their power in all sorts of skill tests, like horse riding, bull chasing, stick and lodge pulling, cock shooting, and so on. The king election was actually a big thing, really, because since the winner could win for free in the tavern, yeah, that's a good one, and he was the first one to choose any girl from the village to go out to the ball. So yeah, you see, it's worth it. And now about the summer costumes. Since summer was the time of work, we only have a couple days, weather predictive days mostly, but no celebrations anymore, unfortunately. Medard Day, June the 8th, was, even up until today, I can say that we use this. We say that if it rains on Medard's Day, it will be a rainy weather for 40 days, the next 40 days. And it's kind of true. So people watched the weather for centuries, and they found this to be true, and it's still like that. So if we have a very wet weather at the beginning of June, the summer will be very rainy all over the year. August the 20th. This is the day of the new bread. Why is it the new bread? This is exactly after the harvest, they use the new wheat to make the first new bread. But this is also the day of the Hungarian State Foundation. And we have a similar parade to the 4th of July. And one more very important autumn feast is Marton Day, St. Martin, his day, which this day ends the agricultural year. On this day, all the animals were sent back from the fields to the hutches. Today it's a national day for eating geese. You see how cute that geese? Well, they look really delicious. Each and every restaurant prepares a special Marton Day geese menu where each course consists of different parts of geese, like geese soup and geese liver and geese thighs. So that's kind of my favorite day, maybe. You should try that. If you go in November to Hungary, on the 11th, it's only on the 11th, go to a restaurant and try it. So thank you for your attention. If you have any questions or you want to share memories, feel free. Thank you for coming.